So, good morning, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here today. Thank you for the invitation, and I hope that at the end of the day, based on our exchanges, we'll find a way to advance. I saw that the other speakers are coming from all around the world, and I would like to explain a little bit what we are doing in Europe and how we see the future. And you see that we are speaking first about an integrated European Union energy system. It's not an energy system, but an energy system in which we try to address all the synergies and to see how we can make it function in an integrated way properly. There are challenges, but there are also opportunities. So I will present, as I said, what are the challenges, what is the main policy which came up last year, especially Energy Union, and what we are doing in the field of energy technologies and innovation. Challenges, in fact, that challenges in Europe probably they are starting a little bit from how the energy system is built, and the fact that in most of the parts of the world we have still a strong dependence on fossil fuels. And fossil fuels, which in comparison probably with Canada, they are not coming from Europe. Most of them are imported. So based on this, of course, that the policy at a certain point starting addressing this import dependency and look how this can be replaced. And all the development started around in 2007 when the first policy in this field was announced. If we are looking a little bit, we saw that production and use of renewable energy increases, but still the percentage is very low. We have renewable energy coming from hydro, but the big challenges are around the variable renewable energy production and its proper integration into the energy system. Challenges are also coming from the fact that we are speaking about an union which is formed from 28 member states. European Union, it's not a federation. There are common policy. There are sectors for which the countries gave to European Union the right to act on their behalf, but energy is not one of these. So 28 countries, 28 different environments, 28 different dependence on resources, and also, I may say, 28 different also historical relations among themselves, and also traditional corridors, if I can say, of import of energy. We are speaking about liberalization of the market, but of course the reality is different if we are looking at all the 28 member states. We still need, and there is a lack, I may say, of energy corridors among the European Union countries. Of course, that if we want an integrated market for energy, we need the energy flows to be able to circulate properly among the European Union countries. We are working on this, but currently, just to give an example, the interconnection degree for electricity of the level of European Union is to be 10% quite, let's say, in the future. So looking at this, you see that currently we cannot speak about an integrated energy market, but it's there that we like to go. Now, of course, that in terms of dependency, as I mentioned, you may see that European Union, it's among the part of the world which has the strong dependence on import of energy sources, which has an increasing trend over the 15 years, I may say. And this trend is continued to continue. It's said to be there because according to the estimation of International Energy Agency, European Union with Japan are the ones for which the increase in dependency in imports is to be the most important in the next period of time. We see that there are countries, of course, United States probably it's the one which succeeded to solve this problem of dependency on imports. And looking a little bit of developments, of course, that we cannot change everything in terms of imports in the next period of time with renewables. this may take time, and we need to properly address this. Based on this, gas is continued to be in the energy system of the future. And if we are looking at what there are LNG terminals currently planned in Europe, we see that there is a willingness to increase the number of these. Why gas? Of course, that in terms of objectives for decarbonization, gas is among the fossil fuels which has the lowest impact, if we can mention this. I will come back a little bit on this. Because looking at all the countries and the objectives that there are for decarbonization linked with the development of renewables, you may see that the realities are different in Europe. There are countries for which the degree of share of renewable energy in the final use in the final energy consumption, it's high. I mean, for the Nordic countries, there we do not have a lot of variable energy. There is hydro, which is mostly, but for all the other rest, there is the variable renewable energy production that is going to be developed. When you have variable energy production, you have big challenges in terms of flexibility, because also the variability in the production has to be replaced by a stable production of energy in order the system to be able to function properly. And increasing flexibility of the level of the system, it's a big challenge at the level of the European Union. In terms of options, all possibilities are to be considered, and of course, that, as I mentioned previously, we need better interconnections among the member states. We need also to consider new technologies. We need to consider storage. We need also to consider demand response, but also flexible production. Flexible production, and as I mentioned previously, of course, that gas is the one which has the lowest impact on the environment. And not at the end, looking at the final use of energy, we can see that it's not electricity the one it's causing the big problem, but it's heating. Heating and cooling represent half of the final use of energy in Europe. So at the beginning of this year, European Union came with a strategy on heating and cooling because things are to be changed here and increase use of renewables to be done in this sector. Of course, transport as well. So in terms of energy policies, which are the main objectives, first of all, it's security of the energy supply, but also the energy prices. You are probably aware that energy prices are, for the consumers, they are quite high in Europe, and energy prices are important not only for the consumers, but they are important also for the industry in order to maintain the competitiveness of the European industry. Protecting the environment and, of course, linked to this, all the decarbonization objectives, of course, linked also with the climate change objectives and following all the developments which were established in Paris at the end of last year. And not at the end, the energy infrastructure and energy grids, because Europe needs new technologies at the level of the grid in order to increase the integration of renewables, but also the fact that energy grids are coming at a certain age, and we need to foresee their replacement in some places. So based on this, what are, I may say, the main objectives? As previously mentioned, you see that there is a triangle looking at security of supply, sustainability, and competitiveness. I may not say that competitiveness is at the top and the security supply are the base. So all of them are important, and the triangle may rotate, and in some moments you may have one of them, let's say, being at the top of the policy, but all of them are extremely important. So based on this, what I previously mentioned, development of renewable sources of energy, diversification of supply and security of supply, energy efficiency, which is one of the top policy in Europe, but also smart infrastructure, new energy grids, and development of competitive markets in Europe for energy. Based on this, in 2007, there were established the energy policy targets, which probably you are aware, and we are speaking about reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 20% in comparison with 1990. We speak about increased share of renewable energy in the final use of energy by 20% and increase energy efficiency by 20%. Probably this will be how it will look in 2020. So the targets for renewables and for greenhouse gases reduction will be achieved. But energy efficiency, still efforts are to be done. Energy efficiency probably is the sector where it's most difficult because we are speaking a lot about involvement of the consumer, involvement of the public consumer, and we are speaking about investments which are needed to be done at the level of households. We are speaking also about change in behavior. It's probably one of the most difficult things to be done, change in behavior. And when addressing the energy policy, we are looking also at this part of innovation. Then in 2014, the European Union, of course, because 2020 is just tomorrow, if I may say, we need to establish a trend, we need to see what we are going in the future. We established the objectives for 2030, and now the level of ambition for the greenhouse gas emission will be double in comparison with 2020, and we are speaking at least 20% renewable energy at the European Union level, and energy efficiency improvement, but at least 27%. So we are speaking about a reformed emission trading scheme, but also new indicators and a better governance system among the member states, because the targets for the renewable energy and for the energy efficiency in 2030, in comparison to 2020, they will not be binding at the level of the member states. We are speaking about the targets at the level of European Union, which increase the challenge and put a lot on in discussion the collaboration among the member states. There is also the energy security strategy, which builds on what I mentioned previously. It was elaborated mostly when it was the crisis in Ukraine. It was winter, and the decision was taken to see what is going to be done if the crisis will come up. So how we are going to address this? Of course, that we need to complete the internal market. The consumers, as I mentioned, they have to be placed at the center. Energy efficiency are key. We have to improve the investments, and we need a behavior change. We have, of course, to decrease the cost of renewable technologies, but also we need to properly integrate these renewable technologies in the energy system. Infrastructure is key also in development of energy supplies and diversification. So at the beginning of last year, Energy Union came. It's a strategy which was developed and it's looked, as I mentioned, in order to, it looks in order how all of this can be achieved and the collaboration among member states to be improved. It has 5 guiding dimensions. For each of the dimensions, there are actions which are foreseen and also initiatives. So the first pillar, it's security of supply. You may see that there are, let's say, probably things which were previously mentioned. Secondly, it's the fully integrated energy market and the fact that we need better regional cooperation among the member states and to improve the flow of energy among the countries. Energy efficiency. Energy efficiency, key element in the energy policy, especially looking at the building sector, because buildings are responsible for most of the energy consumption at the level of European Union. So a lot is to be done in terms of renovation of buildings and changing all the norms in terms of new buildings in Europe. Fourth pillar, decarbonization. Here we are speaking about renewables. We are speaking about the ambition at the level of the Commission of being number 1 in renewables into the world. That means developing cost-efficient technologies, performant technologies, but also proper integrate into the energy system the energy which is then generated. And the fifth, research, innovation, and competitiveness, which was acknowledged as a key pillar in terms to, in order to be able to support all the other 4. Research and innovation is key, of course, that all the other previously mentioned cannot be development without research, without innovation. And you'll see how it was changed in Europe, because in 2008, when we came with the 2020 targets, we had a strategic energy technology plan, which at that moment said, these are the technologies which are priority for us, and we look at this. We supported this technology, and we had results on these technologies. But of course, you cannot support only wind or solar or other forms of renewable without knowing how you are going to integrate. What is happening today in Europe, we have production of renewable energy, which is curtailed because we cannot properly integrate in the grids. You don't have the structure. So in this, and based on this, the thinking was a little bit changed. And of course, that we mentioned that we need to have a system approach. We need to develop a system approach. We need to develop also, sorry, we need to develop also supply chains, integrated, looking at the whole industrial chain in Europe and to see how we are going to develop these technologies, what are the materials, what is the manufacturing, how we are going to recycle, but also the non-technological aspects, looking at business models, how these technologies will be taken by the market and how these are going to be further replicated. So new technology is critical not only to be developed, but also to be further replicated. Based on this, last year, we developed integrated strategic energy technology plan. And for this, which are the four core priorities based on the energy union? So first of all, we are going to work on being the world leader in renewable technologies, but also consumers are to be put at the center of the energy system, with starting from smart homes, smart grids, smart cities, going to smart cities, an integrated concept that we already developed since the first year of Horizon 2020, efficient energy system, buildings and industry, but also transport. And when we speak about transport, we are going to look mainly at storage, but also at renewable alternative fuels. Two additional research priorities, carbon capture and storage, but carbon capture and use. Because carbon capture and storage in Europe, even it was a priority in 2008, it was not possible to be developed. Why? Because firstly, it was in some countries the resistance of the population, having some CO2 infrastructure under their homes. They didn't want to accept this. And secondly, it was also the price of CO2, which didn't make a business case for some projects to be developed. But for decarbonization, carbon capture and use, it's also an option that we'll look at. Nuclear energy, mostly for the safety reasons, is another priority. And the others two, these last two are going to be developed by the countries which are interested to continue to work on this. Now, how we are going to put this into the practice? For each of the action, we are working already, we started already working together with all the stakeholders in Europe and with member states in order to define the level of ambition, how we are going to implement, what is the timeline, and what are the deliverables. It's not just a plan, because for each of the actions we are going to report each year, we have the state of the energy union which is presented, and for each of them we are going to report. And at the end of the year, we'll have an overarching research, innovation, competitiveness strategy. And I think that for all these actions, and as I mentioned, at a certain point, it was the international cooperation which was addressed. And of course, that for each of the sectors, we may find complementary competencies with countries outside European Union. We cannot be number one in all the technologies in the world, even if we'd like. So the idea is, and I think that maybe at a certain point, being in a university, to see how we are going to develop together some new technologies for the future, and what are the common elements that we can, on which we can build. I think this was mostly what I wanted to mention. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'll be very pleased to have your question. Thank you.